3 million years from Earth, the mining ship Red Dwarf. Its crew, Dave Lister, the last human being alive, Arnold Rimmer, a hologram of his dead bunkmate, and a creature who evolved from the ship's cat. Message ends. Additional. As the days go by, we face the increasing inevitability that we are alone in a godless, uninhabited, hostile and meaningless universe. Still, you've got to laugh, haven't you? What is up, Smegheads, and welcome to Series 2 of Thanks for the Memory, a Red Dwarf podcast where we rewatch every episode of the BBC comedy show Red Dwarf and discuss them. I am Lee, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Mr. Blake. Hey, Blake.
What's up, yes, Smegheads? It's Series 2, Episode 1, Kryten, that we're covering. My favorite character, but one of my favorite characters, but not quite.
Yes.
He's almost there. It's his OG version. This episode originally aired September 6, 1988, and it looks like this one might have aired in the U.S. a little bit quicker than the gap the other ones did from the first season.
See, I was going to jump in because we discussed on the last episode how long a time difference there was between the last episode of Series 1 and the first episode of Series 2 coming out, to see if there was like a big difference in... I can't remember why. It's been that long since we recorded that last episode, but I know we did have a good discussion of whether there was a big time jump between the end of the first series and the beginning of the second.
Yeah, like how much time did they have to work on it, or between?
Oh, yes, because we were saying, because the first series they put it out there, didn't they? And they kind of what sticks, what didn't stick, and then how much time did they have between doing that and then going into the next one to kind of tweak things?
Because March 21st, was that the last one of Series 1?
Yes.
And then, so this is September 2nd of 1988, the same year. So I wish, I'm sure I could have dug a little bit when they actually started filming.
Yeah. So 6 months difference in the airing time.
Which is not a lot of time.
Not really, especially like you would think at that point, scripts would be fairly finalised. You would have thought the script for season 2 would have been fairly finalised by the end of the first season finishing airing. Sorry, I said season there, didn't I? Series.
I know. I've tried to catch myself. I labeled it in my phone notes as series and was like, there we go. One thing too, you can definitely tell is they were, I guess it would depend on how they wrote things when they knew this, but they got a little bit more money because the production value definitely goes up in this season.
Oh, yes.
The video quality is a little bit better. Yep. The audio quality, there's still a couple of moments where you can tell it's like, maybe they have 2 mics on set, but not 3 or something. You can like, it's always Rimmer when he's in some weird spot too. Like he really stands out. But I
really noticed that watching these two. So spoilers, we watched like 2 episodes together and record back to back. So I really noticed that one microphone thing after you mentioned it from the last one in this one quite a few times.
Yeah, you can peg it pretty easily, and but you can tell they got more money because that happens less frequently. Also, there's new sets. The ship has grown. It's no longer just the bridge type thing, and then their bunk, which then they made a second bunk room for one of the final episodes. And then, there was a couple of smattering things like down below in the ship and stuff in the cargo hold, but this one has definitive new sets.
Yeah,
I guess that would give us our synopsis. As the Red Dwarf crew intercepts an SOS distress call from the American space cruiser Nova 5 that has crashed on a moon, and they find the only survivor is Kryten, an android butler whose favorite TV show is Androids.
Spoilers, by the way. Spoilers.
Well, yeah.
The
Spoilers.
Only survivor is Kryten, so yeah, spoilers if you haven't watched it before.
Yeah, fair enough. You're supposed to be watching these along with us. And this show starts off literally when you come into the second season, you aren't on Red Dwarf for the opening shots of the show. And so it's the first time, I don't think until we had done our rewatch of series 1 that I realized like, oh, wow. Yeah, they really don't leave the ship. Everything stays here. And particularly, in these first 2 episodes, we watched the series 2. They get out into some other places and other locations on the ship.
Yeah, I think I've put it down in my notes. I think the only location that you see in this first episode that is like from season 1 is their bunk room. I think every other location you see is new.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't think I thought about it. This is the first viewing of the Is this the first viewing of the observation room, or is that the next? I think that's the next episode.
But there's a lot of new locations.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think their bunk room is the only room that you see that's from the previous series.
Did they go back to the original bridge even? I don't think so. Well, they haven't, at least in the first couple that we've seen here.
Because as far as I'm aware, because I've got the where they watch the signal and like interact with Kryten for the first time, that location's brand new. So that's not on the bridge, that's in a completely different room. So I think every location is new to this season other than their bunk room.
Well, something else that's new, I don't know how you want to bounce around this, but
just go.
I wrote my character, I always try to, originally we talked about character standouts, and then later it kind of became just kind of standout things for each character. It's not a big cast. I didn't write down a ton about everybody else, but I did write down the standout for me in this episode that leapt out was Holly.
Yes.
And I think, we're going to have to research this and find it out. I think they changed how they did Holly, and he is clearly on set.
Okay.
Because he holds for some laughter. He starts to deliver a line, and they're laughing, and he stops and then goes on, just like one of the performers on set.
Okay.
Which makes me think that he's on set somewhere, standing in front of a camera, black box, and he's doing it live. Obviously, being filmed in there. Now, I'm not sure that like the guys are always seeing his screen because he's filming cathode ray tubes, boys and girls. For those of you who don't know what those are like, you get a weird. So they probably was still superimposed, but at least they would hear him live on set and they could react to him. I think that's happening only because in this episode and the next one, there are times he stops himself to hold for laughter.
Yeah, that's interesting because we obviously had a conversation previously, didn't we? That I asked you, like, is he there or are they just interacting with like a pre-recorded video? So that makes sense.
And this time, again, I'm not sure he wasn't on the previous, but it's really obvious to me here. He is there because he's reacting to the audience. So I wrote him as a standout just because his chemistry with the cast explodes in this series.
Absolutely.
And I mean, there's an episode, of course, we'll get to that I'm super stoked for, but like he is really part of the crew now, as opposed to this one-off gag machine that shows up.
I'm going to jump in for a bit of trivia here because it's relevant to what we've already talked about, and it happens right at the beginning of the show. So the TV soap opera that Kryten's watching, Androids. In the credits of Androids, the producer and director is named Kylie Gwenlyn, which actually comes up later on because it was a weird reference that Lister calls Rimmer. Oh, you're a total... Oh, no, it's Kryten. He calls Kryten. You're a total Gwenlyn Kryten later on. And I was like, what's a Gwenlyn? That's a weird word. And I even put the subtitles on just to check to make sure I was getting what it was. And it's a reference to the director and producer, Kylie Gwenlyn, which is weird. That's a weird name drop. Not only is it in the credits of the TV show, but he also uses it as a slight on Kryten as well. But this is what I wanted to get to. It's a reference to Neighbours, the Australian soap opera that was in like the 80s, which the cast member Kylie Minogue, we all know Kylie Minogue is not for as an actress now, and the head of the comedy for the BBC, Gareth Gwenlyn. Really strange. Did you get Neighbours in the US?
I did not get Neighbours in the US, but in the past, especially I think when I mentioned I lived in Japan and got hold of a bunch of these episodes again to rewatch them in the early 2000s. Then the internet existed. And so I remember finding things about Neighbours and looking up the actual song. And now I discovered why the live studio audience is dying laughing at the song, because it's just like a Weird Al version of the Neighbours theme song with different lyrics. Yeah. It was
a staple over here for like... When you were about 13, 14, it was that, and we got another Australian soap called Home and Away, and you watched them religiously at that age, and they were really bad. But I mean, there's a lot of, like, Kylie came from there, Jason Donovan, Natalie Imbruglia, like, tons of, like, relatively famous Australian. I'm pretty sure Margot Robbie was on it at some point as well. It's like, it's birthed some pretty famous American, Australian actors and actresses and singers and what have you over the years.
So is it still going on then?
I think it ended a few years ago.
God bless them. That's a good stack of people that they sent out to the world to perform. I I love getting to see Kryten in this. It is weird because on a rewatch, you can't, Kryten will show back up, but he will not be played by the same actor.
Spoilers.
And it's weird because it's hard to just watch it and not compare,
Yeah.
But again, we keep talking about like previous episodes, how this comes out in a time where you can't just go back and stream something or own the DVD set or whatever, right? So when he shows back up, I don't know that you're probably comparing it so much as we do. I think, because I saw a few things out of order, I'm not sure. The next episode that we're going to talk about is one of the early ones I saw, and I might have seen this one out of order and seen season 3 first.
Right.
So I think I always compared. I don't know if I ever just got to see this performer who, as you mentioned in trivia, David Ross. He does come back to the show, but he comes back as one of my favorite characters, little Mr. Talkie Toaster. And he does a great job. I wrote something down that I feel like you will resonate with for a comparison. The first time I watched it, on this rewatch, I watched it like about a week or so ago, and then I rewatched it again last night before recording. Where is it at here? I wrote, this Kryten by David Ross, he moves around just like Crispin Glover from Back to the Future. There's a time where like Lister touches him and he just, and the way he like moves around, it's that weird frenetic sort of like, I'm not comfortable in my own skin thing that Crispin Glover did as Marty, George McFly, Marty's dad in Back to the Future in the scene set in the 50s. There's
a bit very specifically when he's talking like, oh, what do you like to do in your spare time, Kryten? He's like, oh, I like to, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's like,
sleep.
Yeah, like dreams and stuff. And he's like, oh, what an amazing life you lead, Kryten. And he's like proper like giddy bouncing around because he's excited that he thinks Lister's being serious.
It's really something to watch this on a modern screen and be like, woof, they clearly only made that Kryten head to last for this episode.
Yeah.
It's rough. Because
you can see his eye holes through it. I tell you what I just find interesting. Barring the sort of last 2 minutes, Kryten, so like we kind of talked with the cat priest in
Waiting for God.
Yes.
Season episode 5 or 4.
Kryten plays that role quite serious for the most part, quite earnestly, and not. There are jokes in there, but they're not played for laughs.
And I think that's why they're so funny too.
Yeah. Like the line where it's like, they're dead. I'm sorry, sir, who are dead? They're all dead. It's like, oh gosh, I was only away 2 minutes.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Talking about them, I said, where does that? What's the note I wrote about this one? I said that joke of him talking about the in the storyline on the Nova 5, Kryten's, all the ladies that were with his crew are all dead. They're just skeletons, but he acts like they're alive, And that when he says that they are all dead, my God, I was only away for 2 minutes. And he takes that pause before he delivers that, looking at them and sees their skeletons like it's the first time. And mind you, they may have been dead for like 1 million years. We're not sure on the timeline here, right? It is one of my all-time favorite Red Dwarf jokes. It is perfect. It's so well delivered. It's such a thing I love about British comedy, like that play with the language and the absurdity of the reality of what you're seeing. Like I'll just keep carrying on. I'll just keep carrying on, and then like getting smacked with the reality of what's going on. Like,
it's like the joke where it's like, well, what do I do now? Well, I think we should bury them first. And he's like, you're that sure they're dead then?
Yes. It does go on for a minute. I love that.
It's like, are you a doctor? No, but you can tell. So you've just kind of brought it up there. So as far as Lister and Rimmer and Kat and Holly are aware, the human race doesn't exist anymore. But no one questions that they've managed to find this crashed ship with 3 human females on it, still alive 3 million years later.
Yeah, the only thing I can assume is that, if you're out there, you'd be so excited. And I guess if Lister did it, someone else could do it. I don't know if it's explicitly said that way, but that is kind of like a weird hope that's in the back of the show for Lister.
I put it down to, I thought it was just that their hormones kicked in and their little boy brains overtook their adult, normal, actually, let's think about this brains, and that's all they were concentrating on at that. I mean, let's be honest, Cat was. As soon as he heard soft and squidgy, that was it, he was off.
I love the at the time as a kid, I was like, I didn't know what that meant. I had never heard that term before, but we're not on the pool.
Oh yeah, that's a very British term.
Yeah, I love it. I also love that. I'll back up just a tad. We opened with Esperanto lessons.
Yes,
so keeping the Esperanto going,
and he's terrible at it.
I did have a question to see if it was a reference I didn't get for. I forget the insult, but Rimmer early on before they get the call about the Nova 5, he says about Lister reading a book. He said, I've read books. He goes, not one about a dog called Ben.
I think it's just a Spot the Dog reference to like kids' books with, the whole, like the big red ball one from the cat. I think it's just that. I don't think there is a specific book about Ben, but I think it's just that all kids' books are about a dog named whatever, aren't they?
I didn't know. I was like, I wonder if this is one that's more popular in England. I don't know about.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it could have been 30 years ago, but not now, as far as I'm aware.
And for Playing Alone, I realized talking about Holly, the thing that made me think for sure he was on set, specifically on the line talking about decimalizing music, where he's like, I've invented more music or whatever. That bit. He stumbles over because he's the audience is laughing, and so he holds a second and then comes back in. A very thing a performer would do, that's live on the set. So it was that bit. I do love that do re mi fa so fo no wo whatever.
Wo bo ti do, yeah. I had to ask Tracy, so Tracy was watching with me last night, and there was a joke in there, and I feel so dumb at not getting it. So he's like, keyboards would have to be the length of zebra crossings, and of course women would be banned from playing the cello. And I was like, I don't get that joke. Is there something what am I missing then? Tracy was like, because they'd have to be wider, women would have to sit with their legs wider apart. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how the cello works.
Yeah. I felt a bit dumb, naive at that point.
I kind of, I know we were moving ahead in the plot and I brought us back a little bit, but I do have another one of my burned in my brain as a kid, absolutely favorite, one of my other favorite Red Dwarf jokes. And that is the entire bit about the milk.
Oh, yes.
It's dog's milk. It's full of goodness, full of vitamins.
Marrowbone jelly.
Yeah. How can it last so long? No bug will drink it.
I think it's the best line ever, yeah.
And the best thing is when it goes off, it tastes the same.
See, I think they missed it because Lister doesn't, at that point, he stops and he drops it in the bin. A normal Lister joke there would have been for him to just go, and finish drinking it. And he didn't. I thought it was kind of going off his character, a little bit, that. It's
like dog's milk was a bridge too far.
Even for Lister,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that shows how bad it is that even Lister won't drink it.
And that scene, again, so delivered so well with the live audience, is another one that just makes me think, he's got to be there.
Yeah.
Full of goodness, full of vitamins, full of marrowbone jelly. God, I love Holly in this one. As soon as this season or series kicks off, Holly is so good.
I love Holly so much.
I also Cat's not a big part in this. It's funny because we talked in the previous season that he kind of only comes in for jokes. So this is almost going to sound contradictory, and maybe you can help me here because I don't know why it's different. In this episode, he's just got these jokes, but he feels like he's part of the crew as opposed to here's this Lister and Rimmer story, and then every now and then Holly pops up and cracks a joke, and then every now and then Cat shows up. Cat still is just dropping jokes, but he still feels more like he's part of the crew in this episode to me, even though it's not like we're getting character development or anything. He's still just dropping in jokes, but I don't know. He feels like he's starting to feel like part of one of the boys from the Dwarf, you know?
See, it's funny. I've written the opposite down in my notes. I still feel like he's very much just popping in for a quick joke and then off he pops. That for me is going to change in the next episode, but he still feels very much like series 1 Cat in this episode for me.
You know, the moment for me that I wrote this one down too. So, well, the early joke that I just love was all 6 of my nipples are tingling. made me so happy. But I think it might be this one for me. It's when he's staring in the mirror and he on the Nova 5 and can't stop looking at himself and his like awesome spacesuit. And he's like, yeah, dude, you gotta help me, man. Help me out, man. And he honestly asks for help in such an honest way. And Lister grabs him, pulls him off. That it to me, I started to see the link of these guys are hanging out a bunch more than we have seen in between episodes.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And maybe that's what it is. It's nothing huge. It's just like a little bit there. And to your point, it blossoms much more in the subsequent episode. But
I did notice we've got another the recurring thing of Rimmer being obsessed with the aliens, because as soon as Holly tells them that they've got a signal, he's like, aliens. So like, you think everything's aliens, Rimmer? When he used all that bog roll up in a day, you said that was aliens. Well, we didn't use it. Rimmer, aliens used our bog roll.
I love that. Oh my God. And they all, I mean, I should say, I talked about Holly. To me, Holly is the striking one just because I think it is that he's on set, but they're all so just synced into these characters now.
Without a doubt.
And as we said earlier, it's probably not just your performers, it's that your writers and they're gearing it toward these guys now.
Yeah.
We get our first mention of Rimmer referring to himself as Ace.
Yes, I've got that in my notes. That's interesting. We're setting things up for further down the line. Yes, that was funny.
That is definitely something on this rewatch that like I didn't expect, these little things that go, oh my gosh, that's going to be a thing later. Like, it's not like it's a huge through line, but it does come from somewhere. And there's a lot of these little moments, even from the first season, and into this one now, that like they will be bigger things later.
Did you notice any of the female crew's names, by the way? So I specifically paused when he said, I'm transmitting details now. And I specifically paused them all to see if there was any funny details in there. And like one of them's called Tracy John. One of them's called Anne Gill. It was the other one called Jane Eyre, which was kind of interesting, but spelled A-I-R, not air as in. So I was like, I don't know whether that's an actual reference to Jane Eyre or what, but it was just a funny little thing that we noticed when we were watching it last night.
I will give you an insight into my career as a creative for live entertainment. A joke happened in this episode. I went, oh my God. And I looked at my wife and said, do you remember the first professional thing I ever wrote and got paid to write? It was a murder mystery comedy. And I was like, she goes, is that where the title came from? And that was this Wild West thing that the premise was interactive. Guests came into this old mansion and like you would meet these people. It was like 15, 20 years post the American Civil War. So some folks were like attached to had fought in the Civil War. Others were your kind of classic gunslingers, and they were there for a poker tournament, right? That was the premise for this comedy murder mystery I wrote. And one of the few things that to this day, I would send it to you right now and tell you, I still think this is pretty funny. Like, I wish I could be as confident. I think I learned too much to be as confident in my work. At the time, I didn't know enough. So I just wrote this thing. But anyway, because it was based around, card playing and everything else. And the other premise is pretty much all these people suck. And watching Red Dwarf, I didn't realize, man, I really do like stories where like, everybody's a little irredeemable.
Yeah.
to some extent. Anyway, it was called Ace Holes.
Nice.
A murder mystery. and that bit where he's like, they called me Ace. Maybe they called you Ace Hole.
Yeah.
I was like, pause it. That's where that title came from.
Like, I love that bit as well when he's like, just big me up. Say I'm incredibly brave. I died and I was incredibly brave and I've had tons and tons of girlfriends. So when they get on the Nova 5 and they realise they're dead and everyone's just kind of flat. And I love that then Lister's like, I don't know whether this is the right time to say it, girls, but my mate Ace, he is incredibly, incredibly brave.
And he does it very earnestly, which just makes it all the more funny. No, it's a chicken. It takes me back to that moment.
Brilliant.
But he's just so earnest about it. And again, you're just like, oh, this is it. This is the relationship right here. Boom. And he's like, all right, fine. I won't make fun of you. I won't big you. I won't knock you down.
I'll do exactly what you asked me to do.
Yeah. What's the term? Malicious compliance.
Brilliant. I have to ask. There's two things surrounded by. So when the getting ready to go and meet the female montage is happening, and Lister burns the iron hole in his trousers and just sprays over it with black paint. And he's like, "Oh, you wearing those boots? No, you shouldn't wear them. You should wear your Dayglow orange moon boots." Is it me, or were those moon boots red?
They were red, but it did make me wonder, like, if I work on something like a digital piece of art on my my iPad Pro and I send it to you, depending on your screen that you look through, the colors could be different and stuff, you know? And it made me wonder from a color aspect. I was like, I wonder if those were Dayglow, but that's how it showed up on camera.
But they were talking about Dayglow orange is a very specific color.
It is. And I've never seen a color like that in the show, though.
No.
But it's funny you brought that up because my note about that was Lister's boots, ... Holograms can smell?
I've got it. That was the second note. That was the second thing I was going to mention. Like, why are your eyes streaming and what's that smell? Is a hologram. He can't smell or taste or touch anything. So how are they affecting him? And it goes back to you sort of saying that thing. It's like, Rimmer being a hologram is funny when they use it, and then they sometimes tend to forget and treat him like a human being.
Yeah, including the follow-up joke about Holly calling out Rimmer wearing the 2 pair of socks and stuffing the pair down his front. But it's like, but you're a hologram. You've asked for new haircuts, different clothes, and you just get them. Why can't you just say, Holly, give me a bulge?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where my brain went. Look, I think the problem is, Blake, we're looking at this TV series through the lens of 2024, like you say, where people hold earlier. So if you're watching a TV series that's 7 or 8 seasons deep, you expect that continuity to have been there from episode 1. And the problem is that we're holding this to a much higher standard of what it actually was, which isn't a bad thing because it gives us a decent conversation to have of how different this would be if they redid it now. It would be interesting. But yes, it's going to be interesting to see continuity-wise once we start getting 3, 4, or 5 series deep, because then they know it's a recurring thing. It's not like this. In series 2, they were probably still unsure of whether it was going to get another series. Sure.
Also, like, the special effects to do certain things gets cheaper, and so they're able to lean into the hologram thing a couple of times more, and it's a shame because the old way of doing TV actually lets you experiment. Like, as we said, there are things in other episodes you're like, well, this is funny because this has become a theme. Actually, Kryten's theme of becoming his own person is a theme that will show up again later.
Yeah.
And so, by not, living in a world where people could just go back and stream or watch anything, it allowed them to play around. But it's weird that it allowed them to play around and say, well, we'll forget about this or whatever. Let's tweak this a little bit to make it work. But there are these through lines that really stick around, which not so much in this episode, but in the subsequent episode, we'll get into, more conversation, especially about Rimmer and his family. And that almost feels like it is a show you're supposed to watch in order, one, following the other to get the whole story.
Which is interesting because I watched this, and I know we kind of talked on the last episode and the previous one that we felt like it was starting to build on things moving forward. This one for me didn't, even though we're meeting a character that is going to become part of the crew, it still didn't feel like it was building on anything for me, this one. It felt like a very singular episode that didn't have anything to do with anything else, and then we move on. Yeah. Which it probably did at the time.
Yeah, and even just reading the descriptions for the next 2 episodes, those have a through line of this, like, dealing with Rimmer's family are part of both of those next 2 episodes. So yeah, this one does kind of feel like a one-off, and maybe I mean, you could have put it anywhere. I don't know. As I see this episode list for series 2, I remember them all, but I don't remember them sequentially, if that makes sense. I know I've seen all the episodes, but I don't know that I'd ever really, because I saw so many of them out of order, did I go back through and watch those all in order to catch that stuff.
I have to jump in. It's hilarious watching the pair of us stumble over saying series instead of season.
I know.
It's become so natural.
I hope anyone from England is appreciating this American trying to call it.
Hey, it's not just you. Even for me, I'm so used to calling things seasons now that even for me, it's hard to call it a series. It's funny.
Even though I still hold the complete series is different than a season. But anyway, we also get, speaking of locations, how to travel to other locations. We get we find out the Red Dwarf has another ship in it. And this one, it's not, is it Blue Midget? Is that the name of this one?
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's not Starboard.
The famous one will show up later. Yes. That becomes very important. But, so yeah, we get a way for them to leave the ship, because in the prior season, the only thing is they can go out in spacesuit, that's about it. Also, they didn't address it in this episode, but how does Rimmer travel? Because the power of Red Dwarf powers his light beam. Well, actually, I don't know if they call it a light beam at this point, but they powers the hologram. So I guess the assumption is, I don't even think about it literally, so I'm just saying this to you right now.
No, that's a good point.
He's on that ship, so it works. But then he lands on the Nova 5 and it still works. And I seem to remember at some point, whether it's this series or the following one, that something will be said about a portable power. They address it somehow, but it doesn't really get said here. But you don't care because you're so excited to see them show up. It's
exactly what we've been saying. Is we're holding it to a much higher standard than it was at the time.
Well, and it's something to say too that until I just said that to you, I didn't even think about it. Right, so it's not like even on the rewatch I noticed it.
Because it's just a daft comedy. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but we're going to, because, it's 36 years later. And that's what we do nowadays. That's what the internet's for, to scrutinize things to within an inch of its life.
Well, why else did we invent this? I feel like 3 on is when they really go, okay, we have the show Bible. Here are these rules that were established. Yeah. And they do kind of sci-fi them in the sense of Star Trek sci-fi, where some things get explained. Not too much, just enough to kind of justify it a little bit.
See, I remember so little of 3 and beyond, so I'm really looking forward to getting into them.
Oh man, I can't wait. I think it's the reverse for me. I knew these less than I knew those.
Like I said to you, these were the 2 that I owned on VHS cassette, so I used to watch them constantly. Series 1 and 2.
This episode and the next one we'll talk about, man, what a difference from a standard US 22-minute episode airing in a 30-minute time slot and this one coming in around 30 minutes. So much happens in these episodes. In the States, this would only have been there would be so much tightened up. It would open with, Holly, hey dudes, we got a signal, and you would just go, you know what probably. I mean? You wouldn't have all the other stuff to get there. Because a ton happens, because we have all this that occurs. And then the second half of the episode, or last 30%, is dedicated to Kryten, saying that he lives to serve, and Lister hating it. And I wrote Lister's immediate desire to get Kryten to sort out what he wants instead of just being a servant is a core thing that really, instead of just being a punk anarchist, this side of Lister is consistent throughout the rest of the series. And no matter what a slob or selfish he could be or there, this is the one thing that really makes him a good guy. He really wants Kryten to be his own person.
Yeah.
And to be selfish, like choose to be selfish like him. And, or, it's not even like this is getting deep to go back to our first episode, deeper than I would have thought. But like, it's not like he's saying be selfish like me, but you should have the choice to be.
Yeah.
And I love that about Lister. And that is a thing that will continue. We'll see it happen again. It'll get used against him. But that it's cool to see that start here. And it's not like they make a big deal of it, but if you've seen all of them, when you first see it happen, like, oh, hey, there you go. Like that side of Lister is a through line the whole time.
And also that point of, so we go back to, I think it might be the first episode. If not, it's definitely the second, when Lister asks Holly, why Rimmer, Holly? And he's like, because he's the one who would keep you sane. And this is exactly the point when he's like, what happened to my cup of mold, Kryten? Oh, I threw it out. I was growing that mold. I loved that mold. It's like, why? Why'd you do this stuff? Because it drives Rimmer nuts, and what driving Rimmer nuts is what keeps me going. And that proves exactly again of why Rimmer was the right person for Lister to keep him sane, because it gives him a focus of, he might be being an asshole to him, but it gives him a purpose in his life.
Well, it drives him nuts. I remember I said to my wife, we were watching it again last night, I said, as a kid, I don't think, because I'd only heard the Beatles sing, really. I hadn't really paid attention to like interviews or anything. I was fascinated by the way Lister talked, because I'd never really heard a Liverpudlian accent before. And in that particular speech, it was a sound, the way that he says certain things. I'm like, oh man, I remember as a kid being like, this guy sounds unlike anything else, I'd ever heard. At that point, I either knew like, your very standard BBC News anchor, or like the dialects that Monty Python would throw out, right?
And it's funny because most Americans can't really discern English accents. Like I've, as you know, come to America quite a lot. And I'll tell you a story of being in line for a character meet and greet at Disney once during Jersey Week. And we were stood in line, and one of the cast members was talking to a family in front of us. And she asked the cast member asked the mother where she was. Oh, we're from Jersey. Of course we are. And the cast member was like, oh, isn't everybody? And I went, well, we're not. And she went, oh, did you hear that? Oh, we're not. And I'm like, I do not sound like that. Exactly. Like, I do not sound like that. Like,
hello there.
Yeah,
yes.
That is not me. I don't sound anything like that. And it's weird because it's like, there's so many different accents for such a tiny country. We have so many regional accents and dialects. It's weird. And yeah, but it's probably the same for us and Americans. Like for me, there's like 5 American accents that I could probably pick out, and that's about it. But yet, people who live in New York can discern like a Brooklyn accent from a New York accent to a Manhattan accent, whereas we don't. We probably just hear it as a bog standard. So it's probably the same.
Yeah, and I've got one direction, I'm an hour and a half from New York City. The other direction, I'm an hour and like 30, 40 from Boston. And they could not sound more different from each other.
The Boston accent is incredibly strong.
Like, and that's such a distinct thing. And then you got a Southern accent, but then you've got a Georgia thing. You've got Western Carolina, Texas. They are all very different sounding. But, can people pick that out or whatever? No. But as a kid, I really remember I would try my best to imitate Lister all the time. Like, I think his accent blew me away. I was like, this is so cool sounding.
Yeah, and Lister's accent, as far as a Scouse accent goes, is on the softer side as well, for definite.
Oh yeah.
If you go into Liverpool deep and actually talk to a proper Scouser, I promise you now, you would not understand a word.
No, it'd be like when I went to Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, or if you go up like Newcastle, which is like just up the road from us, you get a really thick Geordie accent, not a clue.
I love that though. But and I said, what, an hour and a half away, and where you're at, man, I mean, from like one side of London to the other, it can be a completely different sound, and I do, that was something as a kid, like I picked out, and I never even associated the fact that like he would have been from the same area of the Beatles. Like that didn't make that connection in my brain. And I don't really know until a more modern watch myself that like I understood that he was from Liverpool and had the Scouse accent and everything. I don't think that I would have even like picked up on that. There's a funny, I don't know if it's probably maybe from a show in England, but like it's like a hostage situation, and there's a guy from Liverpool, and the lady has a super thick Scouse accent, and then the guy taking them hostage asks questions. She answers, and he's like, "What are you saying to me?" And the other guy's trying to translate for her. It's great. Like, it's so good. But you're right. Like, I've talked to some folks, and he is much lighter. For as much as a child in North Carolina in the U.S., I thought it was super thick.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Like,
yeah, it doesn't. His proper Scouse doesn't come out that much. In fairness,
I'm still just dying about someone imitating you by going, "Hello there, pip pip cheerio, I'm Lee."
Exactly.
That's
good day to you, sir. Yes, we're at the Magic Kingdom. How are you? Yeah, no, I don't sound like that. I have friends who do sound like that, but I don't sound like that.
That made my day. Speaking of differences between Britain and England.
Britain and England?
Sorry. Sorry, I think I told you I had some late nights working. Yeah. Sorry. Across the pond differences between England and the U.S. So, did you write this one down? Did you have a wonder if Blake gets this or any differences like that kind of stuff for this episode?
Not really.
So, the one I have is more a U.S. thing back to you. So, Kryten, I love his delivery, by the way, could not be more adorable when he paints Rimmer sitting on a toilet and that reveal. And Kryten gets 2 really great slow burn jokes in this, or maybe 3 between the, "Oh my God, they're dead. I was only gone for a while." The slow burn joke of Rimmer on the toilet. And then the quick follow up with that of, "What are you doing?" And his, I think I'm rebelling. Like that, like just.
It's like really thinking it over. Yeah, I think so.
And I love it. But he flips him the bird, the middle finger.
Right.
He doesn't do the 2-finger salute, and we're going to get this happening again in the next episode. But why not the 2-finger salute? Why the middle finger? Is that because people in England would know that was like an FU, but it's not as bad to be on TV as it would be if it were the 2-finger salute? Like,
see, I would think the flipping the bird at that point would have been worse than giving someone the V's. That's quite like, so to me the bird is off, right?
Yeah.
That is generally, I would say that's piss off. So it's
what's hot
less.
Fuzz? Jog on.
So I don't know, and flipping the bird wasn't really a thing at that, as far as I can remember.
And now for sure, he just is like imitating and talked about being shown like Rebel Without a Cause,
probably.
All these American rebel movies. I think they were all American movies, but so that it makes sense there. But it will happen again later too. And I was like, I wonder why it's
I never noticed that.
And jokes that come back. Do you know what he says to him? Like, he's like, sit on this
punk.
Yeah, sit on it, punk. And one of my favorite Kryten deliveries that will happen in a few more seasons will be, "Sit on it and swivel till you squeal like a pig on a honeymoon."
Wow.
And I thought, man, that is so funny that he has this moment here. And it makes me wonder, like, are we noticing it, or did they think about it as they were writing it? Because I feel like that comes in season 4 or 5. It's not even like 3. But it's just funny that he gets that comes back up again for that character, like to flip the bird. But I saw that and was like, I wonder why that's not the V's, man.
I never even questioned it. Obviously, back in the day, I probably would have done. But watching it now, the bird's much more, we use it much more over here than we would do flicking the V's now, to be fair. So that's why it didn't register. But yeah, that's a really interesting point, because it wasn't very prevalent back then. Yeah,
well, and it's like the 0G football thing. There's some weird things that are Americanized, that it's an American football looking uniform.
That was weird.
And I think that even pops up in the next episode. Like, so there, I don't know if it's like, it's the future, so some things have melded together.
Maybe.
Or whatever, which,
I have to ask though, do androids need to sleep?
Oh, that is...
I know, do androids dream of electric sheep?
Thank you. I was like, what is the name of the short story? Blade Runner.
Does an android need to sleep, and would he dream if he did?
C-3PO wants to be shut off every now and then to conserve power.
It's another one of those kind of Rimmer hologram things. We're going androids that need to sleep.
Well, you know what's funny? In 88, your computer, my big honking TSR Tandy, whatever green screen, when you cut that off, you cut that off. But these days, I have to remind myself, I should cut my laptop off. It's been a while because it goes to sleep, you know?
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny that now, and at the time, they wouldn't have known this, but now that is what our devices do.
Yeah.
I don't know. They definitely love to put humanity in everything from a toaster to the actual androids themselves. That's a really good
point, actually. Yes.
It's funny that Lister wants to help out Kryten find his humanity, but he could give like a fly-in for the talkie toaster. Like that is, he draws a line there and it's like, I hate this thing.
To be fair, they both have the same purpose, but yeah, Toasty, exactly. You can shut the up. Kryten, you need to actually get a life. Yeah.
Like there's like no line there of like empathy at all. He hates that toaster, always will. But Kryten he works out with. But yeah, it's there is such a like, you know, force humanity onto stuff. And I think we've always, I mean, from Isaac Asimov's Do's Android's Dream of Electric Sheep and stuff. I mean, I'm sure that's why they put this stuff in there too. Like the only reason we ever tell these sci-fi stories about crazy things is to examine ourselves. And here's this comedy version of it, you know? But it is like, this version of Kryten is super sad. I mean, like as we talked about in like, you know, when we caught ourselves by surprise, how we talked about the first 2 episodes of series 1, it still continues the path of like, take one step back. And the reality of this android is so sad.
Yeah.
He knew they were dead and he flicked a switch in his head to just be like, nope. So he could keep going on and watching reruns of Android.
Yeah.
You know,
and then the same with dreaming about a garden. I've never even seen a garden except in pictures. And you're like, how sad is that all he wants to do is make stuff grow? But like I said, that's the point, is like, he's so earnest, and it tells it like, you wouldn't, if you watch that little bit there, obviously other than the quirky costume, you'd think it was a serious, because he's like, and I just want to hang out and enjoy all the things that I've made grow with my own hands. And you're like, how sweet is that?
And I think that's kind of why it works too. Like, and that vibe will, even with a different casting, will absolutely carry on that like core part of Kryten. I do love that in this one, you know, he goes and actually gets in the Rebel Without a Cause outfit when he borrows Lister's space bike. And pardon me, I think it's funny it's called a space bike because out of nowhere, we did see it in the previous season, but there's a shot of Lister like riding around his little tricycle looking thing. And I can never figure it out if like, is it just something he cobbled together? Was it a thing he had? And I love you've got the trivia in here about it and I didn't know this because it ends now. He goes, I'm going to need your space bike, gives him the keys, which almost implies like he's going to go fly out into space. And it doesn't really look like that's what the space bike can do. It just looks like a motorized trike.
Yeah.
But it does a freeze frame with him kind of doing a very Marlon Brando looking face. He's got the little black leather hat and everything on. Just it's kind of the way he's holding his face more than anything. Yeah. Like he's sitting back cool on the bike, you know. But the episode ended with Kryten being seen leaving Red Dwarf on Lister's space bike and flying off into space. The ending was filmed, but the broadcast version ended with the freeze frame that I saw. And when Kryten revs up Lister's space bike engine, however, the full ending was reinstated for the remastered version. I've never seen that.
No, I don't think I have. It certainly doesn't ring a bell.
I was going to ask, okay, so obviously not then, because in my version on the streaming, it just had the classic ending.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the same with what I watched. I watch it on the BBC iPlayer, so yeah.
I have to go back and look that up.
Interesting. I know we're going to talk about one of my favourite lines in the entire show is when they're arguing and Lister goes, "Oh, drop dead Rimmer." He goes, "Already done it, encore." That the back and forth between Lister and Rimmer is just so good.
Oh, this is our vulgar episode. Speaking of the bird flip, Lister gets so genuinely angry like in a real performance, like dramatic kind of way, talking to Kryten about the list Rimmer gave him.
Oh, yeah.
When he's like, never call him that. You can call him Smeghead. You can call him this. You can call him, dinosaur breath. And on super rare occasions, very rare occasions when you're trying to be nice, whatever, asshole.
Yeah.
Like, and it's he's so angry. Like, he's so pissed off. And it's great. I mean, it's like the reverse of Rimmer's, like the Quagars, like where he's so genuinely invested in making that thing happen that he thinks is an alien. But this show, I think, kind of knocks it out of the park and if you do have the misfortune of ever watching the pilot that they did for the American version,
we will.
It is, we can do the Star Wars holiday special after that. It is those earnest moments, I think, are why I actually love this show.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like even saying the whole bit about like, I forgot, like where Lister really does genuinely want to make Kryten have his own authority and make a choice for his own life. You're like, oh, see, that's why you like this guy. Like those moments of earnestness, I think, elevate it from just hey, some dudes that don't get along trapped on a spaceship. And those bits like help, I don't know, ground it just enough that like I really like the show. Like it, and as it carries on and character moments happen or reveals, they kind of mean a little bit more. It's
interesting though, isn't it? Because what you talk about there about a comedy show with a group of completely reprehensible characters makes me think of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and they have absolutely no humanity whatsoever, and I love that TV show.
That show is brilliant.
But yes.
Well, and they pull off something that I think is like, I'm like, I don't know how they pull this off, but they do. Well, I think the one thing that works is they never win.
No.
If they ever won, you'd be like, I hate these guys. Yes. What am I watching? Secession over here? Like, but they never win. So it kind of works. You're like rooting for the failure,
Do you know one thing I was incredibly disappointed with this episode?
What's that?
Not a single goit.
No, there wasn't. That's right. That's right. There was no goit.
Incredibly disappointed.
And there were plenty of opportunities for it, but we did get a bird flip, and like we got Kryten's return for him flipping the bird and making jokes. But there were no goits.
I have to say, Kryten is incredibly good at his job, by the way. I don't know how long it had been from them rescuing him off the Nova 5, but he'd managed to wallpaper their room, like put doilies on the tables, like completely put like things up around the windows and curtains, and like he completely made that room look so different in like however long it had been.
I don't know if this is true, but it feels like when Lister walks into that room for the first time,
it was the first time he saw it.
It does. It feels like the production crew set the room up and we're like, you can't come in. You have to come this way. You can't look at it at all. Cause he has a look on his face that is like, he's either a ridiculously brilliant actor or he did not see that prior. Like his reaction's great.
I agree because I think so in, whichever episode it is when Rimmer gets his hair cut and he walks in for the first time with that beehive, Lister's reaction is the same. It feels like he's an incredibly good actor, or that's the first time he saw Rimmer with that haircut. So it isn't beyond the realms of possibility that they didn't show him things to get a genuine reaction. Like maybe they said, we're going to give Rimmer a haircut, but we're not going to show you what it is. So he's expecting him to walk in with something, but not that.
You're right.
And then the same with this. He's going to have done something to the room. We're not going to show you what it is. So when you walk in for the first time, genuine reaction.
And it's perfect. And and you can just see it. I love Kryten's little swirling of the bucket there, or the whatever that thing is. That what he's painting out of? I don't know what it is, and throws it into the bunk and everything.
It's like in my dreams, that is a I can't think what the word is. Whatever that tureen, there we go, is gazpacho soup. That's what in my dreams. That's what's in that. It's gazpacho soup.
That's amazing.
I don't know whether it is. It's probably just tomato soup. But in my perfect Red Dwarf thing, it's gazpacho soup.
Oh God, it's so good. He's so good, and it's cool to really enjoy him because obviously like things will change with Kryten later, but like he's great. And the core of what it is stays and sticks around. And we keep saying it, but it is wild how in a subsequent 30 minutes, like, oh my gosh, this thing here like solidifies something that will like be a core thing that carries on like through the show so well, that, you know, we talk about like sometimes you can just watch these out of order and it doesn't matter. Although there clearly are like through lines.
Yes.
Because things get established so strong. But I loved this episode. Do you have a rating for it?
See, I was expecting a little bit more from it, I think. And it's good, but it's not great. So I put it down as a 6.
Oh, wow. Okay. I said a massive 8 out of 10.
Wow.
Because there are some 10 out of 10 moments I love in this. Like that joke about I was only gone for 2 minutes and they're all dead. Like there are just some of my favorite moments in here. So that I bring it up to an 8 out of 10, especially like to kick this series back off. Like if you imagine watching this live, 6 months go by and then you cut it back on and you're in a new place and, we're going, and it lets you know, hey, this season there are going to be new locations. We're going to go to different things. They
didn't beat around the bush with that. They let you know immediately that this is going to be different from the last season.
And what do you call it? Did you already say that? Did we go to that in this episode? The new room that's on the ship, the new, like not the bridge, it's something else.
Yeah, it was like the signal, wherever the signal was, that was new.
Yes.
Yeah, wherever they were watching, like wherever the transmission from Kryten was coming from is a new location.
Oh, right, which where the dog's milk conversation happens.
Yeah.
What is that called? Do we get a name for it?
What, the room?
That room. No, because it serves the purpose that the bridge did. I mean, I just asked because like why not still the bridge? Or they're like, let's make something more interesting, but we won't say it's. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it was the bridge. They just decided to change it because they didn't think people, like you say, won't necessarily pay attention. I mean, does it really matter what the room is really?
I think the bridge will come back though, so I do like that it's like a different room.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the bridge does come back as it was in series 1.
But all those little things, just, you know, beyond, we're back in the bunk for a lot of things, but I just like that the show kicks off with hey, we got a budget, we got a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Here, you know, we're going to do things differently, and everybody is a little more settled into. So I might have an 8 out of 10 with rose-colored glasses, but I definitely threw an 8 out of 10 on there.
I will say the last bit of trivia before we get in that Kryten was named for the character Kryten the Butler from the play and film The Admiral Kryten, which I have never heard of.
Neither have I. I have to look that up.
I thought you might have known it with your theatrical background, sir.
That I do not know.
Well, there you go. Well, he was named after the butler in that, so there you go, which makes sense. Even though it's spelled differently, but it's much more androidy spelt the way they've spelt it.
I like the shiny the suit that he's wearing, but I'm glad we get a new outfit later.
It looked a bit. Let's be honest, it was a bit. So with the Marlon Brando cap, like hat on at the end, all it made me think of was the Blue Oyster Club from Police Academy.
Yes. Oh God, that's a reference.
Yeah, very much. And it squeaked like whenever he was moving around. It was like it was proper PVC that as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that must have been brutal to wear. Brutal to wear. And
obviously on stage lighting as well, it'd have been awful. With that hat, with his like head on as well, I can't imagine it was pleasant.
No, no thank you.
Anything else you want to bring up, Blake?
I think that's got me for this episode.
Yeah.
It was good. I enjoyed it. Made me happy.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to bring up the end of the episode. Of course, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Dwarf Memory and Twitter at Dwarf_Memory for any show updates or whatever we decide to post.
Yeah, and please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you can. Email us your comments, thoughts, and Series 1 ratings to dwarfmemory@gmail.com.
Yeah, because we haven't actually got it. No one sent their ratings for the overall Series 1 yet, so please get them in. Because we've got people listening. We know people are listening.
Yeah, I want to know what people actually think of the Series 1 overall. Gosh, season series. I'll get it by the time we get through 9. The next episode we're going to be discussing will be the next episode of Series 2, which is Episode 2, Better Than Life. Glorious. So make sure to watch before you join us for the next episode. And please do. It's a good one. Well, I think this episode is rather good. Don't you, Mr. Lee, sir?
What are you doing?
I think I'm rebelling.
Rebelling?
Yes. I think that's what I'm doing.
You are rebelling?
Yes.
And what are you rebelling against?
What do you got? Dinosaur breath? Molecule mind? Smeg for brains? I need your bike. Swivel on it, punk!